And now we'll move on with SS600. First, we'll see a few call outs here. Yeah. Principal auditor means the auditor with responsibility for reporting on financial information of an entity which is having one or more components. Components would be like any division, branch, subsidiary, associate, anything. Audited by another auditor. Those were audited by another auditor, and he is auditing for the whole entity. The other auditor means who is auditing that component, specific division or branch. And when the principal auditor uses the work of another auditor, he has to determine how the work will affect the audit. That's another call out. He has to just determine that. And with regards to the division of responsibility, when the principal auditor has to base his opinion, that is, principal auditor's opinion, it was based on the financial information of the entity as a whole, relying upon the statements of the reports that were audited by the other auditors. That was, his opinion is based upon the reports of the other auditors, which would clearly differentiate the division of the responsibility for the financial information by indicating that extent which the other auditors were responsible. And this would not decrease the responsibility of forming a reasonable assurance or forming a correct opinion or reasonable opinion with regards to the whole financial information of the entity. This would not diminish the responsibility of the auditor. And with that said, we'll just move on to SS600, where before acceptance as a principal auditor, what the auditor has to do, like any other auditor, what he has to do, he has to estimate his competence first thing, and the management reliability there. And now the materiality of the portion of the financial information, how material the financial information he was being audited for that entity as that particular component. And the principal auditor's degree of knowledge with regards to business of the components, SQC1. And risk of material misstatements in components audited by the other auditor. What are the risks that he is expecting with regards to the components audited by the other auditor, and the performance of such additional procedures with regards to the components audited by the other auditor. These two were with regards to the other components which were audited by the other auditor. The risk of material misstatement, first thing, and the performance of additional procedures with regards to those other components. And first thing is materiality of the financial information. Okay, fine. And that's the thing that was out of box from which we usually learn. And second thing is the principal auditor has to know whether he was competent enough and he has capability to do the audit or not. This is as per SQC1, and it's as simple as that. And what the principal auditor should do before using the work of the other auditor who is auditing the components, right? Other components. First thing, he has to advise what he has to advise the other auditor with regard to use of his work and report. Advices like communication. Make sufficient arrangements for the coordination at a planning stage of the audit, like exchange of emails or just knowing how the communication has to be, whether it's written or electronic form, and how, to whom they have to address and what timings, etc. Advise the other auditor of the significant accounting and auditing requirements and reporting requirements, and obtain representation as to compliance with them. That is, we are taking a representation. That representation, any written representation means what? Accepting the responsibility for that matter. Then we are taking with that representation that the other auditor is responsible for that. He complaining, he complying with the accounting, auditing, and reporting requirements, and he's like that. And the inform the timetable for date of completion of the audit, and inform areas which require special consideration. First, what he did that he just communicated. Advice here means it's a communication. Okay, it's not a like an advice, free advice that we give to anybody. Just a communication. This was mostly used in banking terminology and all. With regards to advice means also means communication. Okay, advise the, first we have were communicating the use of his report, and make sufficient arrangement for the communication and all. And second thing is that we are taking written representation like an oath that he will be complying. Who is complaining? Other auditors complying with the accounting, auditing, and reporting requirements significant require or significant which are significant, and inform the timetable and the areas. That's it, timetable and areas. And here taking a written representation that he's responsible for complying with that and communicating we use that work and making sufficient arrangements. That's what he has to do before using the work of the auditor, other auditor. While using the work of the other auditor during the audit, he may visit and examine the records of the branch, that what the other components he is using, and nature, timing, and extent of procedures depend on that. He also have to what the auditor has to do before accepting. Have to perform such additional procedures regarding the components, right? What he has to do, he is doing some like changing the nature and timing and extent with regards to the circumstances and materiality and principal orders auditors knowledge of professional competence of the other auditor. Depending upon the circumstance and materiality, the nature, timing of extent of the process change, and principal auditor's knowledge of the professional competence of the other auditor. Other auditors' professional competence would also affect the nature, timing, extent of the procedures. And this knowledge may have been enhanced from the review of the previous audit work of the other auditor. It's like obtaining like information with regards to the other auditor from his previous work. And these were the things that the principal auditor has to do. He may visit and examine the records. He may change the nature, timing, extent depending upon the circumstances and materiality and professional competence of other auditor, and the knowledge that he had with the other auditor from his previous audit work. And other auditor found significant findings in that branch, division, or joint venture, etc., subsidiary, and the principal auditor may consider it appropriate to discuss with other auditor and management of the component the audit findings or other matters affecting the financial information of the components. Auditor may consider it to discuss with the other auditor and the management and how they are affecting the information, financial information of the components. And he may also decide that to, you see, auditor had already found the significant findings in that particular audit. Now, what principal auditor has to discuss with the management of component and other auditors, its significant effect or its effect on the other components, other subsidiaries or other branches, divisions, etc. And he may also decide as to the application of supplement test of records of or financial statements of that component. Such tests may be performed by the principal auditor or the other auditor. These were the supplement tests he could also go for. And where the auditor's report is other than unmodified. That is, he had other auditor report had given a modified opinion, then what? The principal auditor should document how he had dealt with such qualifications or remarks in the other audit reports in framing in his own report. He also have to refer to that. What we have to do, what when other auditor finds significant, he has to discuss their with the other auditor and management of that component with on the financial information of other components and do supplement tests either by principal auditor or other auditor. And when there were a modified report, then he also have to document how the other auditor had dealt with those qualifications. How the coordination between should be the principal auditor and other auditor should be. There should be this is actually a direct question, but we'll just go how we have to do that. Sufficient liaison between the principal auditor and the other auditor. There should be a proper arrangements and all. There should be some trust and all, and the other auditor should coordinate with the principal auditor. Okay, that's what the question is also about. They have to coordinate. Yes. Principal auditor should advise the other auditor any matters having the important bearings. Like the same thing, what he has to do, he is communicating some important areas for the special consideration. He's doing that right now. And the principal auditor may require other auditor to answer a detailed questionnaire. This is again a special point to remember here. And what the other auditor has to do, he has to respond to the questionnaire. That's it. A sufficient license, a coordination should be there and advise all the important areas. And they have to, principal auditors may require to answer a detailed questionnaire and the other auditor has to respond to that. And now, while reporting, what the principal auditor has done, if audit everything has been completed, while reporting, principal auditor has to express a qualified opinion or a disclaimer of opinion. When principal auditor concludes that the work of the other auditor cannot be used. If it cannot be used, he cannot obtain sufficient appropriate information from that component, right? There's a restriction on the scope. That's what they are talking about. For that, when there was a restriction on scope, what you have to do, you have to qualify the report or give a disclaimer of opinion. That's what they're talking about. He may give qualified opinion or disclaimer opinion when he cannot use the work of other auditor and had not performed any sufficient additional procedures. It could not be obtained even after alternative audit procedures. Then this would be a limitation of scope. You have to qualify or give a disclaimer of opinion. And if the other auditor issues a modified report, what he has to refer it to the same in his report first thing. And for here it is, if the other auditor issues a modified auditor's report, the principal auditor should consider whether his report also requires a modification or not. If it's an immaterial component, in immaterial, like say 2% of sales comes from that division or that branch, then that's not material, right? He need not modify that report. But if it's a significant component, like it comprises of 30% of the sales, then they would cast a like a situation where the principal auditor also has to modify the report. And that's it. We have completed SA 600.